Good morning. How's everyone doing today? Thanks for joining us. I'm Dylan.
I'm John.
Today we're going to talk about the hiring process and the steps that go into it along the way. I want to thank you all for tuning in and joining us. For those who are watching live, for those who are going to be watching later, thank you as well. While you're watching, I do suggest maybe you jot down some notes, only because the type of insight that John's going to provide for us could be helpful to you and your company.
Could be. We'll find
out. You want to give a shout out?
Oh, yeah. So today's mug is from Wonderlic. Thank you so much for this. I like my candidates like I like my coffee strong. So appreciate the mug. Thanks, guys.
All right, so let's kick it off. So first thing I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the signs you look for when wanting to add someone to the team, whether it's, having extra work that needs to be done or an extra employee you want to have in the field to gain more clients for you?
Well, I mean, this is like the classic rub, because organizations desire to grow, and growth oftentimes is about hiring people, right? That's probably the quickest thing that we look at. It's revenue and then employee count. If I'm asked, even in the work that we do at Humorisco, when potential clients ask me, well, what are your clients like? They're asking either about employee count or revenue of the companies that we're working with. So I think that those things do work hand in hand. So certainly you should have some sort of understanding, and this is where finance can be a help for sure, of what are the revenue thresholds, right? Based upon the amount of employees that we have now and the work that is coming in, what's our per employee revenue? How are we calculating that? It isn't necessarily only to look at those that are, say, in sales, and this is how much business they bring in, therefore they're warranted. I get that factor. But you do need to look at the other operational employees as well as factoring into that overall revenue figure. So you do want to ask the financial questions. Certainly you also want to be thoughtful about geography. So if your growth strategy includes moving to different areas of the country or of the world, right? If you're looking to do something international, you might not make those revenue figures because you're starting, right? You got to start from scratch. If you're trying to open up something, if you're based in LA and you want to open up something in Chicago and it's ground zero in Chicago, you're going to take a loss on that to start with, right? So you can't always just look at the addition of employees as being responsive. Sometimes it needs to be proactive. We're going to spend X amount of dollars bringing these folks on and opening this market, knowing that we should see a return in this many months, in this many years. So your forecasting, right, has to be pretty strong as well. And so a lot of what you hear me say here is finance related, but that's part of the wisdom in doing that. One of the things I was told early on in my career, which always has stuck with me, is it's easier to add than to subtract. So there's a lot of energy around hiring people. Hey, we're growing, come join us. And then you realize you're not really ready, right? You don't have the revenue, you don't have the workload, and you wind up laying someone off or having to change their position. Those subtraction moments are really tough. And so again, last thing I'll mention, since I just brought it up, is also workload. What is it that the person or people you're hiring are going to do? How is that work portioned out amongst the department? If it's individually, what's the expectation of workload for that person? Where are those numbers and metrics coming from? It shouldn't just be made up. Well, you should be able to handle all of this. Well, that's great in theory, and you might be right, but is there something reasonable to come behind it? One of the things that entrepreneurs sometimes struggle with, individual business owners, is because it's our business, right? I'm an entrepreneur as well, right? So an individual will think, well, you should work as hard as I do. And I have heard that from people for a long time. And if you should work as hard as I do, you would probably have your own business, not be working for me. So having the expectation of people to put in 70 hours a week to get that workload done may not be reasonable. And so you've got to adjust your expectations as well. It'll also make the hiring process more manageable and reasonable.
Sure, that's very good.
Well, thanks.
So now bringing us into, you decide to bring on a new employee, you see all the signs that point in the right direction of that. How would you go about preparing your current team for that new addition, bringing the person on board?
Yeah, I mean, if there's already some people doing the work,
Mhm.
it's easier in some ways because you don't have the personality component. If someone's coming into a brand new role, brand new department, brand new division, brand new vertical, you're starting from, again, scratch.
Yeah.
But if you're coming into a department where there's already people, I don't see enough managers, supervisors having the discussion with their team to say, we're hiring, we're growing, here's what you'll see, here's you're going to see folks coming in to interview, here's the work that they'll be doing. We know you guys are so busy, we're wanting to add another person to help, divvy out the work. Tell them what the plan is, because if you don't, they often will fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
You'll typically have the person who's the weakest link or who is the perceived weakest link think he or she is going to be fired, that this addition is really not an addition but a replacement.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have people be on the defensive as well to say, well, how much are they paying this person? How much of this, or how much time are they going to get? Are they going to get the same amount of vacation that we are? Look, I'm not saying you have to answer all of those questions, but what I am saying is if you're proactive in the reasons behind the hire, which ought to be about competencies, right? Those skill sets, aptitudes that are needed for the work that are missing either right now in the department, or to help those people in the department. Be honest about that. If there's a skill set missing, I got to tell you, most of the employees in that department know it. Right? Sometimes as leaders, we're afraid. We're like, well, if we bring it up, then we're insulting them. Not necessarily. It's all about how you bring it up. So, if you sit with 3 people and you want to add a 4th and you say, well, you all suck at this, probably not going to set a good tone, right? And so we have to find somebody who's good. Instead, right, Sue, I know you're great with this. Mary, you're great with this. Joe, you're great with this. We need to bring somebody else on who can be great with this component as well, because it's something that I know you all know how to do, but we just don't have the time to do it. Be honest.
I agree. That actually brings me to my next question. When you were talking about employees, somewhat being disrespected in a way where they think their job is going to get taken. So I want to ask you, how do you deal with, pushback from a current employee if you were to bring someone else on board?
Yeah, I mean, in those situations that I just described, if someone or a couple of people are being defensive,
Mm-hmm.
I certainly would make sure that you take time to meet with them or the individual separately.
Mm-hmm.
People have heard me say this forever, praise in public, coach in private. That sort of insecurity that someone may be feeling ought to be coached through in private. And ask them, where's it coming from? Why are you worried? What's happened recently that's making you feel this way?
Mm-hmm.
Have I communicated anything to you to make you feel that? And balance that with, there could be some legitimate stuff.
Yeah.
Right. The person really may not be doing the best job and they're starting to feel it and they're worried that it's going to be noticed. Well, let's handle it. I'd rather manage performance now than to have to manage their exit later. Right. Let's okay, right? Why do you feel this way? Because I've been struggling with this. All right. Why haven't you said anything? Let's talk through this. Let's figure out what resources you might need. Let's reevaluate the workload. Whatever those responses would be, that dialogue, again, one-on-one, is going to be really helpful to sort of calm their feelings.
Yeah, and I don't want to cut you off. I actually myself came into those situations where, I didn't want to say anything about it because I didn't want to be perceived as maybe a weak link. But over time, I found out if you open up your mouth and say something, you can solve the issue a lot faster.
Absolutely.
And just let it linger on.
And you're a young gentleman, and your age does not matter, but you're newer in the workforce, relatively speaking, certainly compared to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have to go through your early days giving the perception that you already know everything, you're probably going to have to live that way for the rest of your career, right? Mm-hmm. And miss out on teaching opportunities. So you're right. I think the honesty part is the smartest route to go.
Definitely. So the last thing I want to, wrap up with is, what do you look for when bringing a new employee on board?
Oh my gosh, right? So you've made the decision that you're ready to bring someone on. You've done all of your financial workload, competency assessments. All of that is done. You're ready to bring someone in. You've talked to the team. I think, the next step is really looking at where are we finding these folks with these resources, right? Where do we look? Is it a matter of just posting on Craigslist, right? Is it a matter of throwing ads at Indeed and LinkedIn? And again, all of that can be fine, but that's not really, there may not really be a plan. That really just may be throwing and seeing what happens. So there's a whole thought process around sourcing, right? How do you source for talent? And I think that's probably a whole other time for us to maybe plan next time we get together to kind of talk about sourcing. But there's a lot of thoughtfulness that'll go around where those pool of candidates are, and they may not be known yet, meaning even to the individual who doesn't know that they're looking for a job. How do you get this great opportunity in front of people who say, this could be something for me, right? So we can unpack that a little bit maybe next time we get together.
All right, sounds good for me. We actually covered everything we were supposed to talk about today. For those of you who did tune in, I appreciate you joining us. I also want to thank everyone, like I said, for joining us, and for those who are going to watch in the future. Thanksgiving is coming up, so everyone please enjoy the holiday and be safe.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good one.